All right, so I'm just gonna basically make this video off intuition only, and there's really no sales process here. There is no call to action by the end. There is no literally anything. It really is just to help share a mindset that's helped me get to the place that I am, and basically address the biggest misconception and belief that I hear just so commonly from every architect that I speak to. And trust me, like I have about 10 to 12 conversations with architects per day. Times that over 7 days, we're up in the 40s. Or no, more like 70s, 70-ish. And then times that by 4 weeks, you're like I'm up in the 200s. All right. So if you've ever, I don't even need to be an architect to know an architect's day to day, and that's the beauty of it. And it's the only reason I actually feel so confident that I can actually share this message with you, and that it's you need to take more risk. I'm gonna play a clip here so that you can get an external perspective besides mine, and you'll see exactly what I mean.
The biggest risk in innovation that everybody is taking right now is not taking enough risk. What we all know for sure is that the world is changing. If you're 40 years old now, by the age of 60, you'll experience a year's worth of today's change in roughly 11 days. Logically, in order for you to keep up with that rate of change, your rate of experimentation needs to basically match that rate of change. You have to get really, really comfortable as an organization or as a creator or an individual with failure. When Jeff Bezos wrote his shareholder letter in 2015, he said, in order for us to be successful, we have to be the best place on earth to fail.
I've made billions of dollars of failures at Amazon.com. They don't matter. What really matters is companies that don't continue to experiment, companies that don't embrace failure. They eventually get in a desperate position. The only thing they can do is make a kind of Hail Mary bet at the very end of their corporate existence.
So in our company, how do we do that practically? We have a failure and experimentation team whose KPI, as they report to me every single week, is the amount of experiments we've ran. Notice I'm not saying how many of them went well or really how many of them failed. It's purely the input, which is the controllable, which is how many experiments have we ran. And our job is to ramp up the amount of experiments we're running, because the very nature of it being an experiment means we don't know how it's going to go. For every success we've had, every breakthrough that we've had that's completely changed our trajectory as a business, as a podcast, as a media company, has come at the expense of 9 things that went really badly. And Amazon, again, they said it's the 1 in 10 that pays for the graveyard. None of you know about Firephone. You probably don't know about Endless.com. All of these things cost Amazon hundreds of millions of dollars, but you probably know AWS, which will make them $100 billion this year. The game here to find the correct answer before your competitors, no matter what industry you're in, is to fail quicker than them, because failure is feedback. Feedback is knowledge, and knowledge is power.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So isn't that crazy? Is that we have to embrace failure to embrace growth. The big growth mark for most businesses comes from the 99,000 failures before that, right? And what we know for certain, which I thought was the biggest quote I took away from that, I actually wrote it down here, but he says, what we know for certain is that the world is changing at an accelerating pace. It is ridiculous how fast we are accelerating in terms of skill sets, strategies, AI, X, Y, Z. If you're 40 years old today, by the time you're age 60, you would experience a year's worth of today's change in roughly 11 days, which means that the world is changing so fast that by the age of 60, you would have experienced a year's worth of change in a matter of 11 days. And that's just data. And it's all here to just bring up a point that to keep up with that speed, that rate of change, the way the world is going, the way people are more active on social media than ever before, the reason that most clients or customers are now moving to online vetting, it's like the old ways of architectural businesses, like even real estate, for example, like real estate businesses do not make, the most successful companies are not ones where they're not online, or they have no social media presence, or that they don't market on themselves online. That just doesn't exist. And it's the reason they're so big. And so that means that we as people, individuals, or just overall creators, organizations, etc., we have to get really comfortable with making mistakes and experimenting. And it's just ridiculous to see, tons of architects stop foot because they don't want to take the risk. They want to get out of the comfort zone. They don't want to get out of the status quo. And after talking with 200 plus architects on a monthly basis, you kind of get to a point where it's very repetitive and you can notice patterns as you would anything else. The reason architects are so good at what they do when it comes to designs is because they've had failed designs in the past. The reason I'm so good and I actually am very confident in my marketing skills, my sales skills, etc., is because I've failed a lot of marketing campaigns in the past. 2 years ago, I literally would spend hundreds a day on ads and get 0 results. Or I would take absolute like 30, 40,000 or 40 sales calls in the month and close nobody. So like my sales skills and marketing skills were at their absolute lowest then. But it was only from those failures and pieces of feedback that I was actually able to get to the point where I am, where I'm able to deliver successful results, where I'm able to consistently close clients at a reasonable rate, right? And vice versa. If you want to be the best designer in the world, it doesn't start with picking up a book. It actually starts with getting yourself in the program, getting yourself in the field. And from there, you either experience failure, which is feedback, as he mentioned. You get that feedback, you turn it into knowledge, and turn that knowledge into power. Like that's the equation. And so as this industry and as just the world is moving forward so incredibly quickly, it's just to a speed that you can't even contemplate as an architect, your firm's just gonna fall behind. It's like, it is just ridiculous to see how many architects just don't really believe or have the intuition or aren't even just willing to experiment. And the idea here is like, when we offer paid hour, like we offer a different way of advertising or getting a marketing architectural firm out there versus anything else. And the reason we do it that way is because it's different, and we've experimented with it, and we've actually found results from it. And so for architects to believe that they have to fit within the status quo, they have to do what the big firms are doing. As if you watched, and it's John Bartlett in the video, and Stephen Bartlett, and he actually is one of the biggest business podcasts in the absolute world, and they post videos like that, and I absolutely love them. Because one thing he also mentioned in that video was that when people start to grow big companies, or even just like contemplate the steps in doing that, they start to think at scale. They start to think at the level that they want to be the next Meta, they want to be the next Facebook, they want to be the next Airbnb, they want to be the next XYZ. And what they start to do as new founders, they will start to think at those levels, at scale, at systems at that scale. But when Facebook, Amazon, Airbnb were starting out, they were not thinking at scale. They were just starting step 1, step 2, step 3. And so for the example that he gave was that Mark Zuckerberg would literally go to people's houses and just try to recruit people from Harvard himself. So his personal being would be there to try to recruit. But obviously that's not scalable. You can't do that or automate that at a high level. Same thing with Stripe, one of the biggest payment platforms on the planet, worth over hundreds of billions of dollars. They literally would go to, in the beginning, would go to people's houses and install the software payment process within their computers. right? And so what that means is that these people did start at scale from the beginning. They started with failures and feedback. And then when they got to a certain level where they had to automate, innovate, and make the process more streamlined, that's when it came out the perfect opportunity. And so it's like a lot of architects try to be the biggest firms on the planet from day one. And it's like you're starting to think like you need to implement that kind of scale, but you don't see the work in decades that are behind all of that scale. Like the conversations that were had, the decades of relationship and connections. The firms that are building the Olympics are nowhere near compared to you. Your firm and their firm is like night and day. There is no similarities there. You cannot, it doesn't even matter what kind of work you can do, because the work you can do is replicable. Another person can get just as good as, if not better, than you at your skill set. Same thing with me. There's probably marketers out there that run big brands that do better marketing than I do. But it's not the point of like, okay, in comparison, I'm little and they're bigger. Cool. But what am I going to do? What am I going to do today to help satisfy the needs of my business and growth for myself today? Instead of comparing yourself to the big dogs, the guys, the biggest firms out there, and try to replicate what they do, why don't you focus on step 1, step 2, step 3 in the beginning? Which if your firm is doing less than $1 million a year in revenue, then that means you have serious operational acquisition problems. Typically, as I see, it's like a firm to get to like $500,000 a year. It's just acquisition. It is just acquiring projects, acquiring just networks of connections. Just not only focusing on taking care of your current customers and getting referrals from them, but also acquiring new customers, new relationships, new connections. Whether that be through social media, whether that be through you going out to networking events, whether that be through partnering up with builders and contractors, etc. That's how you grow business. Is acquisition. It's one of the major parts we help in. And then you have hiring and operation issues that come at that point. But if you're under $1 million a year, that's typically the biggest problem is acquisition. If you're at $1 million a year and you're taking home barely any profit, maybe $100K a year in profit, and you're running $1 million a year business, that's telling me you're probably making around like about 8K a month. That's telling me that you have either like you're charging really, really low, which then always comes back to acquisition, or that you're charging high, but your operations are just an absolute, let's just say, not in a great spot. As in your margins are extremely low for how many expenses are going out, etc. And so again, those aren't problems we solve. We do not help companies optimize their current structures and stuff. I imagine at some point we will. But right now, our biggest priority is acquisition, and we help firms with everything acquisition. And the whole point of this video is to show that the status quo, the idea, belief that your customers or just people are not on these platforms, there's no way they're buying architects from this. It's such a status quo, such a stigma, and there's so many people getting results through this method that we've worked with or other firms have worked with, marketing agencies that I've worked with, that I know personally, that it's just ridiculous to say that you're a snowflake. You're 1 out of 1,000 that can't do it. And it all comes back down to the social stigmas, the conditioning you've been through to think that the social media stuff doesn't have what you're looking for. It's all full of children on their iPads. That is just absolutely ridiculous. And the fact that you've been seeing this video is going to show that social media does attract attention. Attention turns into consideration. Consideration turns into interest. And interest turns into a close. And so that's the whole entire process in social media buildings around to actually get the new customers through the door to help scale the firm. And so with all to say, there's no call to action. Like I said, it's really a straightforward video. But embrace failure. Embrace experimenting. Because your firm is literally, if you knew that you were 1,000 failures away from actually a great success or a great period of growth, you would celebrate at every failure. So celebrate and experiment. Get comfortable as an individual to fail and make the wrong moves. Okay? Again, when a company grows, it doesn't grow easily. It doesn't grow non-painfully. It grows in extreme pain. Okay, so embrace that failure, embrace the pain, embrace the uncomfortableness, and don't let these stigmas or social conditioning stop you from experimenting with a decision that may literally change the course of the firm. With all to say, ciao.